A firestorm of controversy erupted this week when a draft document by Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito was leaked to the press. Now, that draft document seems to indicate the court is about to overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortion on demand across the United States. Will Roe be overturned? And what happens from a legal standpoint if abortion policy goes back to the individual states? Here with analysis is attorney and president of the Judicial Crisis Network, Carrie Severino, and attorney and associate director of Louisiana Right to Life, Angie Thomas. Ladies, thank you for being here. I want to start with the unprecedented leak of this Supreme Court draft opinion. Chief Justice John Roberts has launched an investigation into who leaked it. He said this week this is a singular and egregious breach of that trust that is at an affront to the court and the community of public servants who work here. I've directed the marshal of the court to launch an investigation into the source of the leak. To the extent this betrayal of the confidences of the court was intended to undermine the integrity of the operations, it will not succeed. Carrie, how destructive is this leak of a Supreme Court draft, and what impact does it have on the future of the court?
Yeah, it's hard to overstate how shocking this is for people who've worked around the court. While a lot of institutions in D.C. kind of leak as a matter of course, the court up until this week was the one everyone said this is pretty much leak proof. There's just a handful of instances where things have leaked from it, and never a draft opinion in full form like we saw leaked on Monday. I think this is going to have a huge impact on the court. Even major decisions like Bush v. Gore, which apparently really strained some of the relationships, not just among justices, but among clerks who allegedly got into some actual physical fights over it. There weren't leaks in that case. This is a big betrayal, and I think it will make it hard for justices to be able to trust the clerks that they have to work with so closely to help prepare their opinions. And I think the biggest problem is it adds this level of public pressure on the court in a way that I think this leak was clearly intended to do. So now you have in the Supreme Court putting up huge barriers outside, trying to protect the justices inside. I think they'll probably be needing increased security at their homes, even as people have been publicizing their addresses, asking for people to be protesting at their houses. I mean, it's a huge impact to the court and the way it's going to be able to function.
Angie, your reaction to this leak, and I should say, Carrie wrote a whole book about the Kavanaugh hearing, and there were tons of leaks in that as well, Carrie. So the pattern here is not new, but coming from inside the Supreme Court is. But Angie, your reaction to the leak, and as Carrie alluded to, there are protests planned across the country. This Ruth sent us group, they're planning not only to dox and walk on the houses of these justices, the 6 whom they are targeting here that are maybe in the majority, but also to protest and disrupt Catholic masses across the country.
Yes, it's just horrible to think about the impact that this is going to have. And of course, it was so disappointing to see the leak. But man, when you read what was leaked, it was hard to be disappointed. It was just so exciting to read the words of Alito and to just think that this could one day be true and be official. So those of us on the state level who are in states that are prepared to have full bans and protect all life, it's hard to contain the excitement.
To both of you, I know media reports have set the vote count as 5 votes, at least 5, for overturning Roe. How fixed is that vote count, Carrie? How reliable is it?
In most cases, the justices will vote the same week as the arguments. And in most cases, that vote does stay where it was. But there definitely, with some regularity, there's a case where someone will read the majority and say, you know what, actually, I'm not sure I can go with that anymore. I'm going to switch sides, or vice versa. They read it and they're compelled by the arguments and they switch sides. And this has happened in other major cases in abortion, including Planned Parenthood versus Casey, where unfortunately the court was prepared in that case to overturn Roe, and then the votes switched. So I think it's important for everyone to remember, those who are praying for the justices, not just for their safety, but also for the outcome of the case, to remember that there's always the possibility that this vote changes. And I certainly would hope that in light of public pressure, that would not be a reason for change. So this really isn't over until it's over.
Carrie, on Tuesday, you tweeted that the court should immediately release their opinion. I imagine this is why, because you'd like a clean vote on this quickly without time for public pressure and protests, et cetera.
Well, that's part of the reason I hope if we have 5 votes now, let's lock it down. But really, as a practical matter, having this opinion out there puts the court under extreme pressure and even actual physical danger to the court and the justices themselves. I think it's important to end this debate and discussion now. Normally we would expect it to come out at the end of June, at the end of the term, but I think under these highly unusual circumstances, a faster release would be appropriate.
On Tuesday, President Biden had this to say in response to the leak of this draft opinion. Watch.
It concerns me a great deal that we're going to, after 50 years, decide a woman does not have a right to choose within the limits of the Supreme Court decision in Casey, number one. But even more, equally as profound is the rationale used. And it would mean that every other decision relating to the notion of privacy is thrown into question. Well, it's a fundamental shift in American jurisprudence.
Biden went on to suggest that everything from gay children going to school to the use of contraception is threatened by this decision. In the draft, and it is in the draft, and that's the stage it's in, Justice Alito writes, nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Angie, is there any veracity to the critique that throwing out this supposed right to privacy would imperil other Supreme Court decisions?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, Alito went to great lengths in this draft opinion to make sure of that. I mean, the quote about as even the Casey plurality recognized, abortion is a unique act because it terminates life or potential life. So Alito really, he probably said this 3 or 4 times in the opinion that to make sure to differentiate, to distinguish this case and this overturning from all of the other privacy cases.
Members of Congress are accusing some court justices, particularly recent additions, who signed on to the draft, namely Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, of not respecting precedent and lying during their confirmation hearings. Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, pro-abortion Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine, they said the draft was completely inconsistent with what Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh said during their hearings. Now, I'm going to play this for you. Here's what they actually said. Then you can react.
Roe versus Wade is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. It was decided in 1973, so it's been on the books for a long time.
Do you view Roe as having super precedent?
Well, Senator, a super precedent is
in numbers. 44.
It has been reaffirmed many times. I can say that.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey.
If I express a view on a precedent one way or another, whether I say I love it or I hate it, it signals to litigants that I might tilt one way or another in a pending case.
Okay. Carrie, your thoughts on the accusations that the justices lied during their confirmation hearing process?
I mean, you just heard their words. It's frankly, they're all very just descriptive. It's things that I think I could say with a clear conscience accurately. Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973. It's an important case. It's been reaffirmed many times. Those are factual descriptions. And nowhere did those justices promise that they would uphold the case in the future, nor could they under legal ethics guidelines, because as Justice Barrett alluded to, you can't promise how you're going to vote in a future case.
I want to get into what Alito does say in this draft document and what it might mean for the pro-life movement in this country. He writes, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Angie, if the final opinion does mirror the draft write-up here, Roe would go back to the states, and each state would have their own abortion laws. How will the pro-life movement respond?
Well, here in Louisiana, we have been planning for this for several years. I mean, we've been really looking at how are our laws going to hold up after Roe v. Wade is overturned. And this session, in fact, we have a couple of really interesting bills out there. We have our hero, Senator Katrina Jackson, who's holding a construction of abortion statutes bill that reaffirms our trigger. We just felt it was important to reaffirm that trigger. We have a 2006 trigger. It's called the Human Life Protection Act, and it is a full protection of human life. I mean, there are no exceptions, for rape or incest. And so we felt like it was important to reaffirm that. So she's carrying that. And we felt it was also important to go back. There's been so many laws. We have a 6-week ban, we have a 15-week ban, we have a 20-week ban. So we wanted to just make sure that our laws all stand alone unless explicitly stated otherwise. So we're very hopeful that these bills are gonna help put us in a great position the moment that decision officially comes down. And our main focus really has been funding for resources. So in hopes of a fully pro-life state, we're looking at how do we truly support women, especially as Catholics. What do we do? How can we walk with them? And there's this beautiful program called Walking with Women in Need. That's the U.S. CCB program. So I encourage all of the viewers to please look into that and look into supporting your pregnancy centers so that we can all be ready for a post-Roe reality.
Very quickly, is this the end of the March for Life if Roe is overturned? I mean, this has been the largest consistent march, protest, civil rights march in America's history.
Yeah, I went to the march this January, and I was certainly hoping it was the last time we'd march, at least in January. I think we should turn it into a celebration march in the summertime.
Okay. Carrie, some will argue that after almost 50 years of Roe, this is deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. Justice Alito goes to pains to suggest that is not the case. He also invokes the 14th Amendment. Your thoughts on this? There are a lot of people saying this is precedent. You have to support it.
The Supreme Court justices take an oath to uphold the Constitution, not to uphold something that someone said in 1973 about the Constitution. And if a court has added something to that text illegitimately, they should not follow it. The Constitution is very clear about the method for amending it. The framers didn't believe that it had to be, the rest of eternity the same way. But it's the American people in our system who have the authority to do that. That's what keeps us a representative nation and democracy. And so if America wants to amend that Constitution, more power to them, but they have to be the ones. The judges can never usurp that power. So it's very important to return that authority that really was the American people's authority at the beginning, that it ceded to the government under the Constitution, to make sure that the rights that they maintained are reserved by the people and by the states. And this means this isn't finish the question of what's going to happen with the pro-life cause in America, but that's going to be then debated in the legislative sphere where it belongs under our Constitution.
And Justice Alito goes to great pains to point out that Plessy versus Ferguson was on the books for 10 years longer than Roe, and they had to cast that away because it was evil. It was a terrible ruling, and it had to be overturned because it was not in keeping with the vision or the letter of the Constitution. Ladies, we will leave it there. Carrie Severino of the Judicial Crisis Network, Angie Thomas of Louisiana Right to Life. Thank you both.